but it's common sense stuff, but common sense isn't always common practice, unfortunately.
Hey besties, and welcome to our cozy corner of the podcasting world. It's time for another episode of Share A Latte podcast. Here, extraordinary women gather like friends at a coffee shop, sipping on life's challenges and sharing how they've triumphed over every obstacle. I'm your host, Min Sukree, your virtual coffee bestie. I'm here to brew up a heartwarming cup of empowerment, one inspiring story at a time. Imagine us nestled up in a cozy cafe, surrounded by the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, all set for a journey that stirs your heart, awakens your mind, and gears you up to tackle any challenge that's thrown your way. In each episode of Share A Latte, remarkable women share their stories about how they've weathered life's storms and emerged wiser, stronger, and more determined. These stories are like a warm embrace for your soul, reminding you that resilience and determination are the secret to success. So grab your favorite brew, get comfy, and get ready to soak in these amazing conversations. You'll discover your own power to turn these tough times into incredible strengths. The Share A Latte podcast sprinkles hope, courage, and the belief that you not only handle life, but thrive into your day. All right, besties, it's time to embrace those tales of triumphs and get ready for another episode of Share A Latte. Hey there, coffee besties, and welcome to another invigorating episode of Share A Latte. I'm your host, Min Sukree, and today we've got a remarkable guest in this virtual cafe. Joining us today is Julie Lowe, a certified high-performance coach and the founder of Socially Aligned. She's here to share 3 impactful habits that can help us finish 2023 as a healthier version of ourselves. Julie has been featured in Good Morning Washington, The List, Huffington Post, Yahoo Life, Gross Magazine, Authority Magazine, and so much more. Her book, A Few Good Habits, is set to release in October. Let's dive into Julie's expertise. Hi, friends. I'm back with Julie, and I am so excited because today's topic has been something that I have been trying to implement in my life. And I know that if anybody who is going into the fall and winter season looking to make an impact before the end of 2023, high impact habits are key to making a big difference in your life. So Julie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your story about to how you got into high impact habits?
Absolutely. I'm a certified high performance coach, and I have a book coming out this fall called A Few Good Habits. And it really is all about high impact habits. And the way I kind of got into this work is because in 2020, like a lot of people within pandemic, everything kind of came to a head, right? I think if you didn't have good habits going into the pandemic, for a lot of people, things got worse.
Oh, yes.
And for me, it definitely did. I was not into this work yet. And I've dealt with anxiety my entire life. I've struggled with that. And with the pandemic and having 2 young boys at home for an entire year.
This is a busy life.
Right. So I was probably already working like 50-hour weeks coming into the pandemic, super busy as it was. And then here I have 2 boys home, trying to figure out virtual school like everybody else with kids. And one of my children was actually at the time undiagnosed with ADHD, and he was in 2nd grade. So, it just made my days get longer and longer and more chaotic, and the stress built up, the anxiety built up. And I really kind of hit a breaking point, honestly, where I was like, okay, I got to figure something out. Number one, I wanted to figure out like, how do you deal with stress and anxiety? How do you really keep that under control? And how do people that are high performers or high achievers, they get a lot done, how do they stay so effective even when things are falling apart, even when, they have a lot of added stress and anxiety in their lives? I've always been a bit of an overachiever. I want to do well in all that I do. But what I was finding was I was still kind of crushing it at work. But then by the end of the day, I was done. Like I was tapped out. My patience was gone. Like I didn't have anything.
All these things I'm resonating with so much right now.
Right. I had nothing left in the tank for my family or to do, anything fun. Imagine that. Right. So I really thought like, okay, there's got to be an answer. People I know have figured this out before me. Like, what is the solution? And that's when I really started going on my journey of getting certified in so many things, from life and success coaching to high performance coaching, and even studying neuroscience with a neuroscientist to figure out like what is making our brains and bodies react the way they react to certain situations. And how do we get a handle on things? How do we still do big things in our life, but not burn ourselves out, ruin our health, or ruin our relationships? So that's really what got me started on this path.
Oh, I love this. So this all kicked off during the pandemic. But
Yes.
before we get into a little more of like how you changed and how you created these habits in the pandemic, tell us what high impact habits means, because I think it might mean something different to everybody.
Right. Yeah. So high impact habits are those habits that you kind of get a lot of a big bang for your buck out of. There's
Yeah, I'm all about those.
Right, a smaller investment of your time and your energy than you might think you need to really change your life. There are habits that have a ripple effect. So it's not just one little small habit that's like, yeah, that's kind of nice to have. I wanted to find, well, what habits, number one, can make you happier, healthier, more productive, but also remember, I was really focused on like, how do I reduce stress? So I read all these books and I studied under all these people in terms of creating habits. I learned a lot, but what I was seeing out there a lot of times is either the advice was really impractical, especially for busy moms and working women, where influencers would say something like, well, just sleep until your body's ready to wake up and things like that. I'm like, who could do that?
Who has the time?
Kids, and I have work to do, right? Things like that. And maybe it's really wealthy people that have all these resources, and not just anybody can handle these habits because it's super complicated and 20-step plans and things. So I'm like, okay, I have no time for this. I want to know, what are some simple habits that are going to have a big impact in my life, that are going to touch kind of all areas of my life, reduce the stress, and help me show up better. And that's what a high impact habit is. It has that ripple effect. It's simple things that can have a huge impact in your life.
Amazing. Okay, so tell us what small things you did during the pandemic to create the impact during your life, because I feel like, and maybe this couldn't have been me, I know this, but I will tell you 90% of the pandemic was me in survival mode. I was literally like, I'm treading water, and one more thing, I'm just going to be pushed down with the tide and carried away. So what did you do to stop the tide from rolling in? Because the anxiety with me, especially during the pandemic, hit me hard. And I can imagine how much it hit other people hard being stuck at home.
Yeah. And I think that's true for a lot of people where, we were just in survival mode.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to learn this stuff and to really start implementing it. But I'll say the number one thing that I did that really had an instant impact on my life, or at least pretty quick, was really getting in regular exercise. Because, we hear a lot of times exercise is good for you. Like, we all know this on a really basic level. It sounds like just common sense, but it's also easy to blow it off. And exercise is really the number one high impact habit. There's been so much research on this. It's really interesting. Whenever you just start exercising more frequently, it has this ripple effect, like I said, that's almost unintended, where not only can you maybe improve your physical health, but you're less stressed, you're more productive, you are more patient. It has this ripple effect. They've even seen where people smoke less and use their credit cards less whenever they're working out more frequently, which is like, how does that happen, right? So it's like,
that's impressive,
right? It's unintended consequences. But what it is, I think the smoking thing, my guess here, I've never been a smoker, but when you are doing other things to take care of your health, when you're exercising, then it tends to make you want to do better in your health in other areas. For me, in terms of reducing stress, that was huge. Now, it makes sense, but it almost feels silly to say it now. But at the time, I used to always think of stress and anxiety as a mental process.
Yes.
And I thought, like, if I have stress, if I have anxiety, I need to think better thoughts. I need to work on my mindset.
Yep.
And I thought it was 100% just a mental process. And so it was actually really huge for me to learn how stress is a body response, a nervous system response, first and foremost. When you think about it that way, in some ways it took off like this guilt I think I had where I felt like almost ashamed. Like, why can't I get my mind right? Like, I've done personal development work, I've done mindset work, like what's going on in my head that I can't tackle this problem? But it was like using the wrong tool for the job. I was only doing half of what I needed to do. And when you think about stress as a nervous system response and you think of fight or flight, we've all heard of that, right? That's a very physical thing, fight or flight, throwing a punch or running like hell, right? Your body is wanting to take physical action. So it makes sense that when you exercise, when you move your body, you're giving your body what it needs in that moment of stress and anxiety. Mm-hmm. You're burning off the cortisol, you're burning off the adrenaline that spikes when you're anxious, when you're stressed. And the thing is, most of us kind of have this chronic stress going on, definitely did during the pandemic. A lot of people, most people do, right? Where we have this chronic ongoing stress, we have daily stressors. And so if we're not doing something to address that stress, honestly, daily, because we have stress every day, then that stress builds up, kind of like sleep debt. I call it stress debt. It builds up and it builds up. So we have to be doing things to address the stress, burn off some of those stress that is built up in our body, because otherwise it just gets worse and worse. I started to have like brain fog. We get so tense. Like sometimes, you realize your shoulders are up by your ears. Right?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Clench our jaws, right? I know so many women that have cracked their teeth from clenching their jaw so hard.
That's me. I've done that.
Right? Like I had, I've had definitely teeth problems. All this stuff where we carry it around and we come to think it's normal because society has kind of normalized it.
Yes.
It's not normal. Like our bodies are not supposed to live that way, right? So I have found, like, when I first started working out, I'll be completely honest, I'd work out and I wouldn't necessarily feel great immediately afterwards, especially in the beginning. I'd be like, where are my endorphins? Like, you promised me endorphins, right? So you may not find like instantly, you just feel amazing, like after you work out. At least I didn't. But what you'll notice over time is it will start reducing your overall stress levels, because you're doing that like daily maintenance of burning off that stress. And you'll find that you start sleeping better. Usually if you're getting some daily activity, you'll find you're less tense, like physically speaking. My brain fog really started to clear up some. So I would say if you could pick one high impact habit to start with, it would be daily movement. Let's call it movement, right? Because some people don't like the word exercise. They're like, I don't like to sweat and I don't want to go to the gym. So that's my other piece of advice is like, find something fun. It doesn't have to look like going to the gym. It doesn't have to involve running marathons. No. Like find something fun. Just move your body, and it doesn't have to take hours on end either.
So, people are going to ask how much time do I need to quote unquote dedicate to this movement in my daily practice? Yeah,
I would say look at it two ways. Number one, if you can get an actual workout in. And when I say workout, I mean something that really elevates your heart rate. So you can do as little as 2 minutes of intense activity a day. And there is research that shows that actually has a huge benefit on your health. Now, 2 minutes sounds like nothing, but if you're really getting your heart rate up, 2 minutes, like a 5 or 10 minute HIIT workout, high intensity workout, if you're getting your heart rate up, it doesn't have to be that long to get the benefit from it. I try to get like a 20 or 30 minute workout in if I can. It may not be as intense the entire 30 minutes, but the main thing is to get something in that gets your heart pumping and can really burn off that adrenaline and cortisol. So that's what you're looking for. But let's say you have maybe a physical limitation or some reason why you can't do something. I spoke to somebody yesterday that she was like, well, I have a heart problem. Can't really do that. I'm like, okay, no problem. I would do more of a less intense workout, but for a little longer. Cause she was like, well, somebody told me walking's not a workout. It doesn't count. And I'm like, says who? They're like the exercise police.
I was going to say, like, walking is my favorite thing. I specifically got a puppy because he would make me go outside, be in nature and walk. And the best part about walking was that I could put on an audiobook or a favorite podcast and escape from the world for 5 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're going to do something like walking where you're not necessarily getting your heart rate up so much, just maybe try to go a little bit longer if you can. Right. And if you can't go for longer at once, break it up. It's okay. It doesn't have to be all at once. but I always say like something is better than nothing.
Yes.
And try to find something you enjoy. Going outside for a walk, perfect. It's like a twofer, right? Because number one, you're getting the movement, but you're also getting outside, which is another thing that's great for reducing stress. So anytime you can get outside to walk, to run, to get your exercise in, that's perfect, because then you're getting the added benefit of the outdoors. I like to call the little short workouts exercise snacks, like little bite-sized exercise,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So just try to challenge yourself, even to see, like, surely to goodness, we can all find 2 minutes a day to do something, whether it's put on some music and dance or do some jumping jacks or like whatever. Just find something that you enjoy. I have a lot of friends that love to hula hoop. I'm terrible at it, but they love it. And they've actually lost weight, and it's like, that's their workout. So
apparently it's a very good workout.
Yeah.
I have no coordination for it.
I'm like,
I always look at the women who get it done and I'm like, good for you.
Like, I don't know how you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but find something fun. Something is better than nothing. And the other thing I'll say is also, you can't just like have one big workout in the day and then sit on your butt the rest of the day. You need to get up and you need to move some, right? Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else, but I felt called out right there.
Right? Yeah. The first time I heard that, I was like, oh, ouch. Like, hey, now I've been doing good. I've been working out.
That's exactly what I do. I go in the morning, I get a high intensity workout in, and then the rest of my day, because we're both entrepreneurs.
Right.
You know what this like. You're sitting in front of your computer all day long. Yeah. I sometimes have to remind myself to get up and make a fresh pot of coffee, or get up and go outside and walk the dog again. Because so now I feel very called out.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, like, number one, like, if you got the workout in, that's great. But like, if we just plain sit then the rest of the day, and like you said, so many of us do that, because a lot of us, most of us probably have desk jobs at this point. And especially if you get into flow on something and you're really working, or if you have a lot of meetings, we forget. Like, I could sit for hours and hours, like, and then be like, oh geez, like, I haven't gotten up. So I actually have to set alarms to go off. And I actually have like a physical timer on my desk that I can turn whenever I sit down to remind me to get up, because otherwise I will just sit forever. So I have to set the reminders. I can't just trust myself to get up on a regular basis. But if you get up on the regular basis, get the blood flowing again, it's also going to wake you up, because really, after a certain point, like, we're not as focused as we were in the beginning, and we're not quite as sharp. So we need those breaks. And some people will say, like, I don't have time for that. Like, I have too much to do. But honestly, I don't think we have time not to get up on a regular basis. Yeah. Because we are more productive when we move more and we're sharper. And one thing that I love to do is, like I said, I set the reminder so that I get up. And then when I get up, it just can be for 60 seconds or something, right? I can go to the kitchen, refill my water cup, get a little bit of movement, get the water again. And then when I set back down, take a breath, and then actually think about my intention for what I'm working on next. So if you really kind of reset that intention, that's another thing that's going to help you be more focused and more productive. Because sometimes, we're just so used to getting, being at our desk all day and just working all day. It's so easy to get distracted and just fill the hours and not be super intentional in your time. So I like to use those breaks as a reset of like, okay, what am I doing? Am I focused on the right thing? And what is my intention for how I'm going to show up for the next hour before I take another break?
I love that. That is a really great tip. I have heard, like, a lot of my mompreneurs use a timer on their desk. Yeah. And it's usually the same timer they use on their kids when they're like, leave me in 10 minutes. Here's the timer. Yeah. I love that tip. So you implemented, I'm guessing, several high impact habits during the pandemic. Can you tell us one more that you implemented in?
Yeah, the other really big thing for me was getting more sleep, getting better sleep. And, again, it sounds like such a common sense thing. Like, well, yeah, duh, Julie, we need sleep. Like, we all know that, but I think we underestimate just how important it is. And a lot of people, when you say like, well, you need to be getting 7 to 9 hours, like at least 7, that's the minimum. A lot of people are like, well, like, I've been getting 5 and like, I do okay.
Are you?
There's been so much research, though. There's like 50 years of research on sleep that they can say, like, definitively at this point that it's like a unicorn person that is like a very rare person that actually really needs less than 7 hours of sleep. It's just, human biology or physiology. Like we need at least 7 hours. The problem is when we're super busy and when we're super stressed, and especially moms, we do this thing where we stay up late and they call it revenge bedtime, where you stay up, like the kids are in bed and you're like, okay, nobody needs me. Right? Like nobody needs me. Nobody's touching me. Like I can be by myself. It's quiet. And then we end up staying up later just because it's like our alone time, right?
Yes.
I totally did this, right? I would stay up way too late, even though I was exhausted. Sometimes it's just because it was like, okay, this is my one time of the day. I don't have to work and I can just be by myself, right? But the problem is when you do that and then you still have a certain time you have to get up in the morning, of course, you're getting less sleep. And then it's just compounding everything. We're not as mentally sharp when we're not getting the sleep. Our body does a lot and our brains do a lot when we're asleep. Our brains are actually more active when we're asleep than when we're awake. It's taking care of a lot of, processes that we need to recover. And, we're really stacking the deck against ourselves whenever we're not getting that proper sleep. And so I really had to realize like, oh man, like I'm saying I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but then I'm not doing this really simple thing that I actually have control over and going to bed a little bit earlier. I think we just take it for granted. I really started, did the math on like, okay, well, when do I need to go to sleep to, give myself time to fall asleep and then get enough rest. And whenever I started moving my body more, and then I started getting that sleep, within a couple of weeks, it could take a little bit of time for your body to catch up, right? Because we didn't get into this shape overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. But just those simple things really started to make a difference to where I felt like I had the energy and I had the mental capacity again to really start making some other changes and other shifts in my life. But, it's common sense stuff. But common sense isn't always common practice, unfortunately, even when, even if you're like super smart and all this stuff, it's just so easy. Like, yeah. Like I've heard it before. And we instead like search for some, I don't know, sexy app or big plan or something, to figure things out. When I think if we just uncomplicate things and we go back to common sense, basic practices, it can have a bigger impact on our lives than we usually kind of think it can, because we're just looking for something fancy and new. And I just don't think that's really the solution.
I am completely in agreement. It's definitely, we need to break it down into the basics. Okay. So you suffered from high anxiety during the pandemic and most of your life. Sleep is not the easiest thing for a person who's got high anxiety. Like that. That's true. Like, the idea of sleep, we understand the concept, but then I'm sure like you, when you first started being like, okay, if I go into bed at 9, I could probably fall asleep by 10. The reality is that probably didn't happen. What did you do to get yourself to sleep? Because I think I'm not saying it's an easy decision, by the way, to decide to go to bed by 9, read for a couple of minutes or scroll on your phone for a couple of minutes and then, turn everything off and try to fall asleep by like 10. What did you implement in to get your sleep to a place where you would fall asleep so that you could get the 7 hours?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because when you think about it, sleep itself is not a habit. It's just something we do. It's really more about that sleep routine and that routine that we have pre-bedtime that helps us wind down. So number one, I think, kind of treat yourself like a toddler and have a bedtime routine. Like, I don't think we outgrow the need for a bedtime routine.
Absolutely.
We need things to wind ourselves down. Really basic stuff like making sure that your room is dark, because obviously the light impacts our sleep quality. Staying off of devices about an hour before bed, because I was really bad about being on my phone and having that phone right in my face before bed and doom scrolling or, whatever. And so like getting off of those devices, I started reading actual physical books before bed instead of staring at a screen. The other thing is, when my anxiety was at its worst, I really found that my anxiety would get the worst right before bedtime. It was really interesting. It was like sometimes I would keep it together all day, and then I would lay down and be still and like have a panic attack, sometimes literally.
Yeah, I know what that's like.
So it's a thing. And so it's like we finally have that time to just be with ourselves, and then it can spike the panic. So For an actual panic attack, I learned EFT tapping, so emotional freedom techniques.
Yep.
It's one of those things when I first heard about it, I was like, seems a little weird. Like, I don't know about this. Like, you're literally just like tapping on your face mostly. As you can probably tell, I'm a big science nerd. So I looked into the research behind it. There's actually been hundreds and hundreds of studies on EFT tapping. And many of them actually prove that it can be more effective than talk therapy for anxiety and depression. And it can work like in the moment. It would stop my panic attacks fast when nothing else could. Because if you're just trying to tell yourself to calm down when you're having a panic attack, like that's not going to work. It's just not. It's going to make things worse. And then if you don't totally understand what's happening either, it can be a very, very scary experience. I learned EFT tapping. I love it because anybody can learn it in minutes. You can learn it for free on YouTube, and you can do it anywhere. Anybody can do it. I even taught my son when he was 8 years old how to do tapping, because a lot of times with ADHD brain, you can really, your thoughts can go out of control at bedtime, and that would kind of sometimes stress him out. So I taught him how to do it. So literally even children can do this. It's so simple. It works fast and effectively. So EFT tapping can be really great. Like I said, that basic kind of, they call it sleep hygiene of like, drop the temperature in the room, because we sleep better when it's a little bit on the colder side. Make sure it's dark, stay off of your devices, and then have that routine, have some sort of soothing routine that's going to tell your body, tell your brain, okay, it's time to sleep now. Mm-hmm. I would even listen to like sleep apps. And so I'd listen to the same meditation every night. And that was part of my routine. Now, I know a lot of people, if you have small children, my kids were terrible sleepers, right? They're older now. But if you have small kids, or if you have a job or something that's waking you up in the middle of the night, there are things out of our control, but there's so much in our control that we just honestly don't make the effort to make those changes to try to prepare ourselves for sleep. Because I think we just take it for granted. Like, well, it's sleep. Like we can all do this. It's not complicated, right? Yeah. But we really do need to kind of prepare ourselves mentally, physically, and our environment for better sleep. And it can really make a difference.
Right. Amazing. You talked a little bit about what your life looked like during the pandemic and before you implemented all of these. What does your life look like now that you've implemented these high impact habits within your life?
It's honestly like a complete turnaround since 2020. I still have moments where I can feel like my stress rising and things, but I haven't had a panic attack in at least 2 years, if not more. It really got that under control. And the other thing is, like, when you do these things, like get more sleep, you exercise, you do the basic things. I think the big thing is you're just setting this new baseline for yourself, right? Because my baseline before was where I was so chronically stressed. I was so easily tripped into fight or flight mode that I didn't have a lot of capacity. It would take something little to really kind of trip me into fight or flight. Mm-hmm. Whereas now my capacity is higher. It takes a lot to really stress me out, like, and to a huge degree, or to get to the point where I would say, like, I'm truly anxious. So I think the big thing is that it just has built my capacity where it takes a lot more to rattle me. The way I like to think about stress too is the goal isn't to eliminate stress. I always thought, like, oh, I have to, you want a stress-free life. Like, my goal is to never feel stressed or anxious again. That's just not reality. If you have people you care about, if you have work you care about, there's going to be stress in your life. So I really had to come to the understanding of, like, my goal is not to eliminate all the stress in my life. My goal is to have the tools so that I realize I am capable of handling whatever comes up, and I'm resilient enough to bounce back. And so really kind of understanding, like, okay, there's always going to be stressors in my life. I just need to get my baseline to a level where I don't so easily, trip into panic attacks and things like that. I have more resilience, I have more reserve, and I know, like, okay, I've got tools in my tool belt to handle things. I've got this, right? And that's really kind of where I'm at now after I've, it takes some time. You have to work at it. But if you build up that physical reserve and also work on, there's still the mindset component. But kind of taking that holistic approach of, like, okay, what do I need to do to get myself physically in a good place and mentally in a good place So I have that resilience, I have that bounce back, and I feel really capable of handling whatever comes my way. And that's thankfully where I've gotten myself to at this point.
Oh, that's amazing. I love this. How long did it take though? Like, I think that's another key question is like,
Yeah.
I think we're hoping, especially in this day and age, we're hoping for the instant gratification.
Right.
And let's be real, like that's not what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm sure there was a point too where at the beginning when you started implementing this, did you say to yourself, like, is this even worth it? Like, I'm not seeing anything.
Well, like I said with the workouts, I'd work out and be like, I don't feel good. Like,
Yeah, what does this feel so good? Yeah.
I'm exhausted and kind of sore. Like, this is crap. Like, right. So it does take some time. The other thing is it took me a long time to learn all the things that I know now. So it was like, I would find one thing, I'd be like, oh, this is it. Right. Like I learned about nervous system regulation techniques and I'm like, this is it. Like, I just need to regulate my nervous system. And I would learn ways to like calm myself and to recognize what state I was in, if I was in fight or flight, or if I was calm and regulated. And that helped a lot. And then I realized, oh, I don't just need techniques to calm down. I also need ways to actually make friends with stress and leverage stress, right? So looking at stress differently and learning more about it, that made a difference. So it's like all these things kind of added up. So it took me a couple years, but that's the reason I wrote the book, because I was like, I have spent at this point an embarrassing amount of money on certifications and programs and books and like all this time and all these hours. And I'm like, oh my God, why is there not a resource that tells you exactly what habits to focus on, exactly what to do to reduce stress? Like, why did it take me so long and so much money? Like, I even like got certifications in these things, right? And I'm like, I shouldn't have had to pay, $10,000 for a coaching certification to understand how to really use habits to reduce stress and be more productive and be high performance. So that's another big reason I wrote the book, is because I was like, okay, I read a lot of books that would tell you like, well, how to make habits stick and things like that. And they would say, choose big, high impact habits. And a lot of times they would point to exercise, but then they would just kind of leave it at that. And like, well, go figure it out. Like anything could be, a keystone habit, just figure it out. I'm like, no, like, just tell me what to do and don't make it complicated. So that really is the reason I wrote the book, is because I was like, it shouldn't be that hard. It should be easy access. Anybody should be able to find this information and kind of be able to put the pieces together of like, okay, these are the 4 things I need to focus on. These are the high impact habits that are going to have the biggest ripple effect, the biggest bang for my buck. They're going to be easy, common sense, practical things that I can do. And then I also explain like, well, how do you make the habit stick? Because it sounds easy to say, well, exercise, but I don't like it and I'm really busy. So how do I do that? Right. So really kind of explaining to people too, like, yeah, it's not necessarily easy. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. How do you make these habits stick? How do you make it simple? And how do you get started with it? So I'm hoping that with the book, and, I also do coaching work, that it's going to give people it's almost like a one-stop shop of like, how do you figure out the things that you do so that you can make these changes faster? And it's still going to take some time. It's still going to take some work, because like I said, we didn't get into this state overnight. But I'm hoping it's going to make it way easier for people to figure out like, what do I need to focus on that's really actually going to make a difference?
Right. Oh, I love it. So a quick timeline.
Yeah.
Was it like a year? Was it 2 years? Are you now
for
hitting
me,
your stride?
Yeah, for me, it was probably closer to 2 years. But like I said, it was because it was like, I would find one thing and I would do that for a while. And then I'd find another thing, I would do that for a while. Yeah. So it took me some time to like put everything together. And for everything to add up, but it was mostly because I kept like buying program after program, a book after book. And then I had to kind of do that step back of like, okay, what is actually making the biggest difference? What did I try that didn't work? And like, kind of to sort through like all the things that I did and go like, okay, I did, because oh my gosh, I bought all the gadgets. I bought PEMF mats. I tried all the things, did all the things. And there was so much stuff that I did that I honestly wasted so much money on and so much time. that it took me a while too, of like trial and error to figure it out. So yeah, it took me probably about 2 years, but I don't think it should have or had to take that long at all. I think if somebody knew exactly what to do, depending on how high your stress has been, depending on your particular lifestyle, like it's going to take some time to chip away at that stress debt and to really get yourself back to a steady state. But, I guess I would say an average, a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think a couple of months is doable.
Yeah. And it's not that you're not going to see any results for a couple of months, but to get to the point where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see a really big difference. Because like I said, the things that have to add up, where you're not going to get one good night's sleep and one workout in and be like, I'm a new woman. Right? I wish it was like that.
If only it was
only, right? So it'll take some time, but if you stick with the healthy habits and you give them some time to add up and have that compounding effect in your life, I do believe within a couple of months, you'll feel way better than you did when you started.
Right. Amazing. So let's get to the good stuff. When does your book come out and where can people find it?
So we're looking at October. I'm not sure when exactly in October. It's in the hands of the layout designer right now, but we're looking at October. It'll definitely be available in Amazon, and then we'll kind of go from there. But you can find it on my website. And right now, if you go to my website, there's actually a sneak peek at the book. So I'm not sure exactly when this is going to air, but if somebody hears this before the book is out, if you go to my website, you can get the first chapter for free and kind of check it out and see what you think, and then buy the book when it comes out in October.
Amazing. Yeah. Where can people find you if they need more resources and maybe take your program into creating a better, more impactful life with impactful habits?
Yeah, you can find me at coachjulielowe.com, and all of my socials are Coach Julie Lowe as well. Amazing.
Thank you so much, Julie. One final question. What is your favorite coffee order?
Oh, my favorite coffee order. It's kind of basic, but a peppermint mocha is probably my favorite.
That's delicious. I love peppermint mochas.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Julie. I really hope you guys got all such amazing information. I'm so excited to implement a lot more of these into my daily life to create better habits and create a healthier version of myself going into 2024. And that's a wrap on today's episode of Share A Latte. I hope you found Julie's 3 high impactful habits as enlightening as I did. Remember, small changes can brew big transformations. Julie Lowe, thank you so much for gracing us with your wisdom and warmth. We can't wait to get our hands on your upcoming book, A Few Good Habits, this October. Until our next coffee chat, stay caffeinated, stay inspired, and keep brewing positivity into your life. This is Min signing off on Share A Latte. Take care and keep sipping your way to success. If today's episode added a touch of warmth and inspiration to your day, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. By doing so, you won't miss out on any future heartwarming journeys we'll embark on together. And hey, if you enjoyed our flavorful conversations and the embrace of this beautiful podcast, why not take a moment to leave a review? Your thoughts and your feedback mean the world to me, and it might even help others discover the magic of Share A Latte. So whether it's a few words or a heartfelt reflection, your review goes a long way in spreading the joy. Life is like a perfectly brewed cup of coffee, a blend of experiences that come together to create something truly remarkable. Just like every bean contributes to unique flavor, every cup in our cup of stories adds a depth of richness to our journey. Until next time, besties, remember you have the power to turn your trials into triumphs and your scars into stars. Keep believing in yourself, keep chasing those dreams, and above all else, keep thriving. This is Min taking her last sip from the Share A Latte podcast, reminding you that life happens and coffee helps.